Today, we're traveling back in time, way before the pyramids pierced the sky, way before the first pharaoh even existed. We're going to uncover the story of the culture that laid the very foundation of ancient Egypt. I'm talking about the Naqada II people, the ones who, you could say, invented it all.
So if it wasn't the pharaohs we all know and love, who was it? Well, the answer actually lies with this incredibly powerful prehistoric culture that came up from the south. And they were fueled by two things: gold and a whole lot of ambition. So let's dive in and see how they pulled it off, how they built the world's very first nation-state.
Yeah, this is the story of Naqada II. And it's a story that really rests on these three pillars: an unbelievable amount of wealth that came from gold, a sudden, incredible explosion of artistic creativity, and, well, brutal warfare that ended up bringing everyone together.
Okay, so before we get too deep, let's get our bearings. We need to know when and where we are. We're talking about a time called pre-dynastic Egypt, and trust me, it was a period of some seriously radical change.
So the period we're zeroing in on is roughly 3500 to 3325 BC. And look, this isn't just some boring date on a timeline. This is the pivotal moment. It's when all these scattered villages along the Nile started coming together, merging into one powerful and, yeah, pretty aggressive force. It was basically the blueprint for everything we think of as ancient Egypt.
So what was the engine behind all this? What fueled this incredible growth spurt? Well, it really all comes down to one thing: a very shiny, very precious metal.
And believe it or not, the secret to their power is hiding in plain sight, right in the name. Naqada, or Nukt as it was known, literally means city of gold. Can you believe that? They were basically sitting on a geological jackpot, with all the mineral wealth of the Eastern Desert right at their fingertips.
So you've got this perfect storm, right? Gold pouring in from the desert and massive food surpluses thanks to the Nile's floods. This meant that for the first time, not everyone had to be a farmer. You suddenly have this huge workforce freed up to become specialized artisans, potters, stone carvers, you name it. This just fueled an absolute explosion in crafts and trade. And honestly, it left their neighbors in Lower Egypt completely in the dust.
But as you can probably guess, when you get that much wealth, you also get a lot of inequality. And the clearest, most fascinating evidence we have for this, it comes from how they treated their dead.
I mean, look at this. This comparison tells you everything you need to know about the birth of a class society. On one side, for the average person, you get a simple pit in the sand with a couple of pots. But for the new elite, whoa, we're talking huge, deep, roofed tombs just overflowing with treasure. And then, look at that last line under the elite tombs. Yeah, that's right, ritual human sacrifice. It's pretty chilling.
And that practice, it reveals something really profound. This wasn't just about showing off how rich you were. No, this was about demonstrating absolute, unquestionable power. Power over life and death itself. This whole idea of retainer sacrifice is a really shocking preview of the kind of divine authority that the pharaohs would claim for themselves later on.
Okay, so this massive shift in society, it didn't just happen in the tombs. It was mirrored by a pretty radical transformation in their art. And the best place to see this change in action, it's in their pottery. You can literally watch a cultural takeover happening right in the clay. The older, local styles of pottery, they just start to fade away, and what replaces them is this new kind of mass-produced style we call D-ware. And the really cool part is, when you find the exact same style of pot hundreds of miles apart, it's a huge clue. It tells you that a single, dominant culture was spreading its influence and unifying the entire region.
And their art, it really gives us this fascinating and sometimes pretty mysterious window into their world. You have these elegant bird lady figures. Are they supposed to be goddesses? Or maybe dancers? We just don't know for sure. Then you have these strange bearded men carved on ivory tusks. Who are these guys? Foreigners? Mythological heroes? And then there are the boats. Boats are everywhere, which is this constant reminder that the Nile wasn't a barrier. It was their highway. It's what connected their entire world.
And speaking of a connected world, the people of Naqada II were definitely not isolated. Far from it. They were basically pioneers of international trade, reaching out and making connections with civilizations thousands of miles away.
I mean, think about it. Finding lapis lazuli all the way from Afghanistan and silver from what's now Turkey in their tombs. That's just stunning proof of how far their trade networks reached. But their most important connection, their biggest trading partner, was Mesopotamia. And what brought the Mesopotamians all the way to the Nile Valley? Well, you can probably guess. It was Egypt's seemingly endless supply of gold.
And this is where it gets really interesting. This isn't just a one-way street. It shows this clear process of cultural borrowing, and importantly, innovation. The Egyptians saw useful tech from Mesopotamia, things like spouted jars that are great for pouring, or cylinder seals for keeping track of goods, and they didn't just import them. Nope, they started making their own versions, copying the designs but using local materials, adapting these foreign ideas for their own needs.
So you've got this massive influx of wealth, new technology, new ideas from abroad. You'd think maybe this would lead to some kind of peaceful golden age, right? Wrong. It all culminated in conflict. And out of that conflict came the rise of the very first kings.
And this thing right here, this single, intricately carved knife handle, is one of the most important artifacts from the entire period. It's basically a prehistoric comic book, and it tells the whole story of unification. Just follow along. First, you see warriors battling it out with these new, super deadly pear-shaped maces, a weapon they got from Mesopotamia. Next, you have this heroic figure taming 2 lions, which is a classic Mesopotamian symbol for royal power. Then, a massive naval battle on the Nile. You put it all together, and the verdict is clear. This is the story of how Egypt was unified through war.
And it wasn't just about warfare. At the same time, all the core symbols of what we think of as pharaonic rule start to pop up. We see the earliest known depiction of the red crown, which would become the symbol of kingship for millennia. We see the beginnings of organized religion, with gods like the bull-headed bot. And, maybe most importantly of all, we see the very first baby steps towards writing, these little proto-hieroglyphs appearing on pottery and tags.
So, the takeaway here is that the unified Egypt we all know from the history books, it wasn't born from everyone holding hands and getting along. No, it was forged in the fire of war between these rival city-states. And out of that chaos, one city, Abydos, came out on top, victorious, and ready to conquer and control the entire Nile Valley.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it. Pretty much everything we consider ancient Egyptian, the pharaohs, the gods, the crowns, the symbols of power, even writing, and that incredible monumental ambition, it all has its roots right here in this incredibly dynamic prehistoric period.
So, from a city of gold to a unified kingdom, the real foundations of pharaonic Egypt weren't laid in massive stones, not at first. They were laid in conflict, in long-distance trade, and in revolutionary art. In just a few hundred years, they set the stage for the next 3,000 years of history.
But it does make you wonder, right? If history is always written by the victors, what stories from all those people the Naqada culture conquered have been lost forever to the desert sands? Something to think about. Thanks so much for joining